I've listened to the Atomic Mr. Basie by Count Basie for half a year.
And I listened to it once yesterday.
Welcome to Spin It. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spin It, the record ranking podcast for people who would rather be listening to music. I'm James, and with me, the Atomic Mr. Connor.
I'm subatomic.
Subatomic, so smaller than an atom, or like less than atomic?
One of them is cool and the other one's mean, so...
I feel like they're both not cool, but okay.
Being smaller than an atom? That's pretty darn cool.
I mean, I guess.
Well, and subatomic? I mean, that's like quantum realm stuff. Ant-Man.
That's Ant-Man stuff. And here's my fellow Ant, Connor.
It's pronounced Aunt.
No, he's not Aunt-Man. He's Ant-Man. Anyway, that's not the point. And you're not even the atomic one. I just said that to make a relevant joke to the album we're talking about this week.
Aw, you said I'm not atomic?
No, you're not subatomic. Mr. Basie is the atomic one.
There can be more than one.
Oh, that's true. There are a lot of atoms in the world.
Adam Sandler.
No.
Others.
No, you can't think of any other people named Adam. You thought of Count Basie. You thought of Adam Sandler. And that's it, huh? You can't name any other people named Adam.
Why can't I think of another Adam?
I don't know.
I mean, there's Adam and Eve.
That's true.
One of the most famous Adams. Oh, Adam Driver.
Oh, Kylo Ren.
Yeah. Oh, Adam Levine. And then, of course, Adam Devine.
That's right. But I feel like it's pronounced divine.
Is it? I don't know.
Well, Devine. I don't know. It just is spelled like divine. So I assume it's pronounced like...
Sure, it's divine. I don't know if I can name any more.
You're all out of Adams. He is disintegrated.
Well, there's Amy Adams, but I don't think that counts.
Oh, no, that's true. She doesn't count. Well, she does. Adams. She's more than one Adam.
Oh, aren't we all?
Literally, yes.
This is how you thought this episode was going to start?
I actually, for some reason, did not anticipate quantum physics jokes from you in the Atomic Mr. Basie episode, but I should have known better. Should have seen it coming. I'm stoked, though. I'm excited for this week because it's another Deep History episode. I really like the Deep History ones. Not to be confused with the Deep Purple ones, which is last week's episode.
What we did last week.
But this is Deep History.
Yeah.
Diving back into the Great American Songbook. Some jazz standards. Probably not as much necessarily as Duke Ellington or the Gershwins, like we did before, but, I mean, you gotta include Count Basie among the greats. That's why he's a Count. Do you know, I mean, you're the jazz standards guy, Michael Bublé listener, and Gershwin listener.
You always shoehorn me into being these guys. Why is that me? Just because I brought Michael Bublé?
Michael Bublé, and you talked about the Torch songs in the Great American Songbook. I mean, you kind of started this podcast's forays into jazz, period.
Yeah, you're right. I'll take the title.
Right, that's why I called you the guy.
Hey, I'm the guy.
Yeah. So do you know, have you encountered Count Basie at all in your jazz journey?
Who hasn't?
That's true. I feel like some people haven't, and that's a shame. And that's why, I mean, we're doing him here today. Close Encounters of the Count Basie kind. I like it. I think Count Basie brings a real big band style to the table that's kind of unique compared to the other artists we've talked about that are in the same vein. And I really feel like he's perfect for the year of discovery. I don't have a fun story about how I discovered the Atomic Mr. Basie, except for the fact that I knew who Count Basie was, and I was like, I should listen to a Count Basie album. And this is one that was pretty highly regarded. He's another case where a lot of his work was done before albums were like the thing. So he's got a lot of pre-album songs. But the Atomic Mr. Basie is pretty widely considered one of his best records, or at least a good starting point for the rest of his catalog. And so here we shall start. So if you've encountered Count Basie, are any of these 11 tracks old standards to you?
Oh, yeah.
Or are these 11 hot off the presses?
No, they're not hot off the press.
Good, because they came out in 1958. 75 years ago.
Think about how hot they would have been back then if they were still hot.
They've been 75 years hotter. That's crazy. That's why the album cover is a big explosion, because of how hot these were. How fresh and new all these tracks were. Count Basie spitting fire with his orchestra. But you did know some of them then.
Yeah, I'm the jazz guy. You said so yourself.
Well, that's true, I did. And you embraced it yourself. Well, how many out of 11? Can you say which ones yet? Or are you holding that back?
I mean, I could, but why do that now when it'll naturally come up when we talk about the songs?
Well, that's true.
We're here to learn about Count Basie right now, not about me.
That's a good point. Well, I mean, we are here to learn your opinion about Count Basie, but I guess that's final spin territory. Really putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
We'll get there. But you're right, Count Basie up first. William James Basie, who you would better know as the Count, is the kid from Red Bank. You might know that if you knew that he was born in Red Bank, New Jersey, back in 1904, 120 years ago. Really getting back into the historical weeds. He was born into a family of musical talent. Basie's father, a carriage driver who had his job replaced by a little invention that you and I might know as the automobile. But his dad could play the mellophone, which is like a French hornish brass type instrument. And his mother, a baker, played the piano. So he had access to a lot of carriage rides, a lot of bread, but also a lot of really cool music from the piano and the mellophone. He was kind of immersed in it as he was growing up. His mother actually gave the Count his first piano lessons herself, little Will Basie, and she eventually hired someone to teach him more advanced techniques. Once her skill level ran out, she's like, I can't help you any further than this. Let me pay someone to teach you. And he got his lessons for $0.25 a lesson. Little Basie, he took to piano very, very quickly. He was a natural at it. And actually, one of his part-time jobs was cleaning and doing menial tasks for the local Palace Theater, right? The kind of job you would give to a kid who was just around and wanted extra money. So he swept the floors. He did, I don't know, clean the bathrooms, whatever they hired him to do. And in exchange for all that work, he was able to go see performances and silent movies for free, which is cool. That really gave young Count Basie a taste for improv and the kind of music that went along with silent movies. That's really what whet his appetite for performing and traveling to entertain. He had a ton of access to see people come in from out of town and entertain crowds, and he said, wow, I really like that. Basie also really loved to play the drums, too. I mean, as much as he was good at piano, he had a real passion for playing the drums. He actually might have gone on to be a full-time drummer, except he got intimidated by the skills of another Red Bank local, a drummer named Sonny Greer. Greer was a really good drummer, to be fair. He actually would go on to be the drummer for Duke Ellington himself. So I think maybe Basie's hesitancy to compete with him in the same music scene probably was wise to hold off on that. Also, by the way, you've heard Sonny Greer play.
Impossible.
Not impossible. In fact, definitely confirmed. We did our episode on Ellington Uptown back in the 90s, and he didn't play on the LP release of Ellington Uptown, but Sonny Greer is actually credited with playing the drums from the Liberian Suite that was featured on the 2004 CD reissue that we talked about. So all those dances that were a part of the Liberian Suite, you were listening to Count Basie's rival, Sonny Greer. I drummed up a little spin cycle reference. Anyway, Basie sees this guy tearing it up, and he decides, you know what? Nope, no drums for me. I'm just going to play piano full time. By the time he's 15 years old, he's committed to that path. They were friends, though, and they did actually play together for a while. Kind of a super group before they were super, which I guess is just a group. At this time, in his mid-teens, Count Basie was hanging around Asbury Park, like Bruce Springsteen, right? Asbury Park, New Jersey. And he was playing gigs, and he was frequenting pool halls to get connected with other musicians, doing a lot of networking. And in 1920, he decides to head north to Harlem in New York City, really to follow the jazz scene and try to make his mark, right? That's where the heart of the action is, in the 1920s. I mean, Ellington's tearing it up, Ella's up there, I mean, the Cotton Club's up there. There's so much happening in Harlem and in New York City. Basie played and toured with a ton of different acts all across the country, in vaudeville circuits and in jazz bands. He was going from major music city to major music city. He would bounce around like to Chicago, New Orleans, St. Louis, Kansas City. Doing that, he was able to rub elbows with icons like Willie the Lion Smith, Katie Crippen, Gonzelle White, James P. Johnson, even Satchmo himself, Louis Armstrong.
Whoa.
Yeah, what a repertoire for an aspiring jazz musician. While he was home in Harlem, Basie also learned to play the organ from the iconic Fats Waller. If you don't know the name Fats Waller, you should. But Basie learns the organ from him, and he starts to hone his instrumental skills in these improvisational cutting contests. Basically, like dueling pianos, right? You go up against another pianist, and they'd play something, and you'd play something back, and they called it a cutting contest because you were like honing your skills. You were sharpening your abilities against this other player. And in 1928, little William Basie, I guess he's not so little. I mean, he's what, 24? Anyway, little William Basie hears big band music for the first time in 1928, and he knows that he's got to be a part of it. his aspirations suddenly shift from jazz pianist to being a big band leader, and he really wanted to bring his band up to the level of Duke Ellington. In 1929, he left his band and he moved to Kansas City to be a part of Benny Moten's band, who's currently at the time pushing the boundaries of swing music with Basie's musical guidance. He brings Basie on board to help him get a leg up on the competition. But Benny Moten sadly passed away in 1935, and Basie kind of took off on his own with a 9-piece band he called the Barons of Rhythm. They took up a residency at a local club, and they appeared regularly on a local radio broadcast. Actually, the radio announcer who introduced William Basie was the first to ever call him Count Basie, because he wanted to draw comparisons to other icons like the Duke. You know, jazz has a lot of royalty, right? Ella Fitzgerald was the Queen, Duke Ellington is the Duke, Basie is the Count. So he enters this regal line of jazz musicians thanks to this DJ.
Yep.
What do you think is the worst royal title in jazz to have?
Ooh. Like specifically in music?
Well, I guess, yeah, just generally music, but yeah, all of it. Sure. Is Jester an official title? Because the Jester of jazz would be pretty cool.
I think that's cool, though. You said worst.
You're right. It wouldn't be fun to be known as the Jester of jazz, but it would be cool.
I think they all sound cool, though. Like, as I'm running through them in my head, like, I can't think of one that isn't cool.
No, it's tough. Okay, I've got one. I think the Earl of Rap would be a bad one.
But that's not, but the Earl of Jazz sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you expanded it to all music.
You asked for jazz titles.
I did, but then you said all music, and I was like, sure.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, but Earl of Jazz, you're right, is pretty cool.
Like, I'm just like running through them, like
The Squire of Jazz?
the Jazz Squire.
Oh, darn it. When you say it like that, it's cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, you can always make it work. Like Despo, the Despotess of jazz.
Still good.
Yeah. Oh, what about Tonku? Apparently that rank you can have. It's not really an English title. I had to go out of the English.
It definitely, what you said sounds a lot more French, and I don't even want to take a guess at if you're pronouncing it correctly, but it might be closer.
Probably not. Caesar.
Oh, the Caesar of jazz.
Emperor. The Kaiser.
That guy does German jazz, yeah. Yeah, I think we can just safely say that any regal title you give, any title of nobility is cool.
I was going to say you could even open it up to like religious titles of rank, but even those ones are kind of cool.
Yeah.
The Jazz Pope.
The Cardinal of Jazz.
Yeah, like those are all pretty good.
The Bishop of Blues.
The Bishop of Blues is awesome. I'll be honest, King might be one of the worst ones.
I think you're right, but that's the one that gets given the most. I think we should, you know what? As Americans, we should change King of Pop and King of Rock. We should go president.
Well, at least for pop, because then alliterative.
The president of pop. Michael Jackson, the president of pop.
Who would be his VP?
Bubbles.
You're a genius.
Yep. Anyway, Count Basie, I think, is a nickname that really works.
Where were we?
I don't know. I was just talking about how Count Basie earned the nickname Count Basie. So, yeah, Basie is in Kansas City. Benny Moten has died. Count Basie sets off on his own with the Barons of Rhythm, a 9-piece band that he's leading himself. And he's innovating all along the way. The Barons of Rhythm were actually the first band to use 2 tenor saxophone players. And what Basie did was he would split them up and put an alto saxophone in the middle, which might not sound like it makes much of a difference to you, the untrained jazz player, but it really does. It's called the split tenor style, and it became a standard arrangement for musicians in a band. So that's really cool. He invented a new way for people to stand.
Yeah, that's cool.
In 1936, Basie and his band headed into a Chicago studio for their first proper recording session. Again, 1936, so the band's been going for years. Producer John Hammond described that recording session as the only perfect, completely perfect recording session I've ever had anything to do with. So apparently it went really, really smoothly. Basie's first proper record deal came from Decca Records shortly thereafter. In 1937, the Barons of Rhythm relocated to Harlem, pretty much making it to the big leagues of jazz. And at first, they did not hold up to snuff. It was tough to swim in the deep end all of a sudden. But they kept at it, they kept learning, and they even brought on Billie Holiday during their performances as a vocalist from time to time. Huge clout right there. After World War II, though, big band seems to be pretty popularly on the way out altogether. People just aren't listening to it anymore. You know, culture starts to shift after the war. Basie starts to tighten up the group. He moves away from swing and big band stuff towards written arrangements of jukebox and bebop type songs. He's doing less jazz type improv and really, cutting it down, kind of becoming a jukebox type band. Throughout the 1950s, his band hits about 14 members, and it even features flutes, which is really cool. But that's the situation we're at in 1958 when we make it to the Atomic Mr. Basie, the album we're talking about today. And again, by and large, Count Basie's not an album guy, and his music isn't really album music, right? Despite a career that began in the early 1920s, Basie really does not put out an album in full until 1952. So even though the Atomic Mr. Basie came out in 1958, coming up on 40 years into his career as a band leader, it's actually only the third album to bear his name. And his name is actually technically all that it bears. Today it's known as the Atomic Mr. Basie, but its official title is just Basie. And it's even got another alternate title of E=mc². Like Einstein's theory of relativity. Yeah, a lot of titles slapped onto this one. But the Atomic Mr. Basie is kind of how it's gone down in history. The band recorded the record over 2 days in October of 1957, which again just tells me they were experts at what they did. To record an 11-track album in 2 days with 14 band members, they were real pros. The album would be released in January of 1958. Basie's orchestra for this album used a bunch of arrangements prepared by a guy named Neal Hefti. Do you remember the name Neal Hefti by chance?
Never heard of it.
Yes, you have.
Definitely wasn't told to remember it.
You made me say it 3 times, so you'd remember it. Don't lie to me. But it seems like you did remember it deep down and you're just lying to me. That's okay. So Neal Hefti,
Hefty.
Neal. He's the guy that inspired Deep Purple's Space Truckin'. But in addition to inspiring Deep Purple, Neal Hefti is on his own. He's a composer and he's an arranger, who, in my humble opinion, is most notable for working on the score to the 1960s Batman TV show starring Adam West. He wrote Na 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 Batman. That was Neal Hefti. I know you're a Batman guy. Don't pretend you don't love that theme song.
So wait. What you're telling me is Batman is a space trucker?
Yes. Sure.
Batman space trucking?
I guess, but more importantly, what I'm telling you is Batman, or at least the guy that wrote Na 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 Batman, he wrote and arranged the Atomic Mr. Basie.
Understood.
Yes, which is super cool. Everything's interconnected. I love it. So Neal Hefti's working on these 11 songs. Basie's goal with these arrangements was to create a really big band style with a more traditional sound, but something that still had enough mainstream pop appeal that it could appear on the Ed Sullivan Show. So he's kind of trying to blend all these things into one. He has a big band music's on the way out, but he wants a traditional sound, that's pop friendly and going to appeal to a wide audience. The Atomic Mr. Basie, I think, succeeds in kind of becoming a crossroads for all of those elements. It's a real turning point just for big band as a genre, kind of a revitalization for it. The liner notes of the Atomic Mr. Basie credit 4 trumpeters, 3 trombonists, 5 woodwind players, the Count himself on the piano, a bassist, a guitarist, and a drummer. Each member of Count Basie's orchestra, from saxophonist Lockjaw Davis to guitarist Freddie Green to Snooky Young on the trumpet, each artist represents a really notable figure in their own right in jazz and music history. I mean, to the point where every single person that played an instrument on this album has their own Wikipedia page, which is incredible. I mean, you got to be a very famous trombonist to be a trombonist with a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It sure is. Several of the tracks that Hefti wrote and arranged for this would go on to become jazz standards. More on those in a little bit when we get to the rest of the album. But the record was pretty much a massive hit. The Atomic Mr. Basie won 2 of the first Grammys ever awarded. It won Best Jazz Performance for a group and Best Performance by a Dance Band at the first annual Grammy Awards in 1959. So that's awesome. I mean, this is as old as the Grammys get.
Yeah, he and Ella Fitzgerald are tied for the first African-American Grammy win. They both won one that year.
Yep, in the first year that it existed, which is pretty great.
I actually have some interesting. The mixtaper, hoping you didn't realize that was the first one ever, had some interesting factoids about that. But
Oh, yeah? Well, can you tell them to me since the mixtaper can't?
yeah, he's passed them on to me since he couldn't use them.
Uh-huh.
His title for the fact was going to be that Count Basie's in a special club with chipmunks.
With chipmunks?
And that's because...
Alvin and the Chipmunks, did they win a Grammy in 1959?
Oh, they sure did.
Wow.
The Chipmunk song, famously covered on one of our best Christmas albums of all time, that we've, one of our best episodes of all time.
Dr. Demento was a wild ride. I'll give you that. He was definitely a wild ride.
It's still performing very well. Thank you, audience, proving me right to do that.
In July and August, why are people streaming it now? I don't know, but they are.
But anyway, it won Best Recording for Children and was actually nominated for Record of the Year.
Wow. What a way to kick off the category.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it is such an innovative production technique. So I guess I can understand. I mean, Record of the Year, if that's the type of thing you're appreciating. Yeah.
It also won Best Comedy Performance, or more specifically, the performer did, but it was for that song.
Dave Seville. Yeah, that's really fun.
Also, in the first ever Grammys, the Best Original Cast Album went to Meredith Willson for The Music Man,
That's right.
which is awesome. My favorite musical.
They had trouble.
Frank Sinatra cleaned up. Ella Fitzgerald cleaned up. Count Basie did well. The Chipmunks also won for Best Engineered Record, non-classical.
Certainly is non-classical. Imagine if it was. Imagine Alvin and the Chipmunks doing Ave Maria or something.
Now I really want to hear that.
Oh boy. Somebody's done it.
I don't even think I realized how well the Chipmunk song did at the Grammys.
It's kind of bizarre to think about. 1958, 59, it was a different time in recorded music history.
Yeah, the first ever Grammys honored some of the music's greatest heroes. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald,
There's some of the legends of music.
Count Basie,
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Ridiculous. True legends. And you know what? You don't see a quadrilogy of movies out there about Count Basie. I'm just saying.
Dang. I mean, he is just saying.
Where's the animated series about Frank Sinatra? That's all I'm saying.
I know.
So yeah, that's the Atomic Mr. Basie in the nutshell. Companion album of Alvin and the Chipmunks, the contemporary of the great monks. But it's a light album. It's a fun album. It's unique. I think it's very listenable. It goes by really quickly, but there's a lot of stuff happening at all times with these arrangements. I hope that you like it, and I think you will. So that's 1958, the Atomic Mr. Basie. Basie's career continued, of course. He performed at an inaugural ball for John F. Kennedy. He released a collaborative record alongside Duke Ellington, and a lot more. The orchestra kept touring, recording, appearing on television. Count Basie continues to lead the band for most of his life. Actually, in his late 70s, though, he started to struggle with pancreatic cancer.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he passed away in 1984 down in Florida. So, over the course of 50 years, again, most of which are full of live music and singles, Basie made a lot of music. Now, it's a little ambiguous to look at his discography. Little tough to tell what's a compilation and what's a proper album. But Basie and the orchestra are credited with about 100 live and studio albums, many of which do feature artists like Ella Fitzgerald, Big Joe Turner, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Sammy Davis Jr., Joe Williams, and many, many more. However, none featuring Alvin and the Chipmunks, so missed opportunity there. But the last albums released during Count Basie's lifetime came out in 1983, just a year before his death. So, I mean, he worked and put out good music up until the end. As far as his awards and accolades go, there's quite a few. Basie has an honorary doctorate from Berklee College of Music. He's in the New Jersey Hall of Fame as of 2010, and in 2019 he made it into the Blues Hall of Fame. Count Basie also has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's got a street and a theater named after him in Red Bank, and his childhood home is a National Historic Landmark. Shoot, even the blog publishing site WordPress rolled out a software update that they codenamed Count Basie in 2013. He has earned a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom from Ronald Reagan. He's been on his own stamp, and a lot more. And in addition to the 2 Grammys that the Atomic Mr. Basie won in 1958, Count Basie has won an additional 7 Grammys between the Grammys founding and 1984. 4 of his works are in the Grammy Hall of Fame, including April in Paris and a song that you may remember from our episode on B.B. King, Every Day I Have the Blues. So that's Count Basie. That's the Atomic Mr. Basie. That's where we're at for today. 1958, swing, big band, jazz, traditional, but popular enough to be on Ed Sullivan with the Kid from Red Bank. But before we can talk about the Kid from Red Bank, we got to talk about the Dastard from the Untrue. Is the mixtaper ready for Factor Spin?
Oh, he's ready.
I thought he might be. Well, I hope I'm ready for him. Guess we'll have to give it a go.
I think you are. I think you got him.
You think so?
Yeah.
I appreciate that vote of confidence.
Yeah, I'm always over here rooting for you, even though you kicked me out.
I don't kick you out, and you always say that you don't leave. You still listen. I don't kick you out. It's just the mixtaper needs to share your microphone for a couple minutes so I can hear what he says.
Yeah. We should really get him his own.
That's true. We're like 160 episodes in, and he doesn't have his own microphone yet. But what are you going to do?
Hey, it's me, the mixtaper. I do have my own microphone.
Oh, you just don't use it?
No, why would I do that? It's more fun to kick Connor out.
That's a fair point. Works for me. I'm not the one that's mad about it. You'll have to take that up with him. Boy, oh boy, are you ready for Count Basie facts?
Yeah.
I don't know if I am, but I better be.
I guess we'll start here. He's a real-life count.
He's a real-life count. Okay. I mean, yes, but you're talking not in the sense of jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like in a real title of nobility sense. What's he a count of? Is it count a specific regional thing? Like, is there a count of a place?
Yeah, usually.
Or is it like a count in the court of a king of a region?
I thought you might ask this because I had the same question.
Yeah, I feel like I should know how it works better. But like, I don't know, like the Earl of Sandwich or whatever is a guy of a place.
Yeah, it seems like it's both. Because I found examples of people being like count of blank, and then I found other ones that were just like count and then their name.
Okay.
So I don't know the difference. I don't know if there really was one. I think sometimes royals were just like, I want you to be a count, but I don't have anywhere for you to be count of, so you're just a count.
General.
It's how it seemed like.
General count.
But yeah, most of them are count of a place.
So which one is Count Basie?
He's count of jazz.
Right.
But like officially.
Oh, so this isn't just a thing that he calls himself Count and has been called Count. Not like, colloquial. Somebody made this legit.
Yeah.
Who did that? Who's got authority over jazz to make such a claim?
Apparently Spain.
Spain? He's the Spanish Count of jazz?
Apparently.
When did they do this and why? Why Spain?
I mean, why does Spain do anything?
Because they can, I guess.
Just posthumously, Spain awarded Count Basie with a countship over the region of jazz.
Well, hold on now. Spain's not dead yet.
Well,
oh, you meant posthumously for...
Okay. He is Count of Jazz, an honorary count title.
He's the Spanish Count of Jazz.
He's the Spanish Count of Jazz.
That's awesome. Over there, they pronounce it has.
Stupid.
Yeah, it was. That was pretty dumb. I don't know. Why would they make it official? Why is it not enough just to be called Count?
To honor his contributions to the genre and culturally, he was actually a pretty big cultural influence internationally. Like, he took American jazz culture and helped spread it across the rest of the world.
Yeah, I kind of believe that. I think this is true. I'm going to say that this is a fact.
He says it's a fact.
Yeah, well, the way I see it, I mean, he already was colloquially known as Count Basie for decades and decades by the time Spain did it in, like the 80s, the 90s. So, I mean, any title of nobility at that point is pretty much honorary, right? And he does seem like a major influence. Spain specifically maybe is an interesting pick. I'm not so sure how to feel about that, but I believe that he could be a real-life count.
This is a spin.
Of course, it's the first thing you'd lie about, too. Now that I think of it.
That's why I decided to get it out of the way before we had time to settle in to the game.
That's unfortunate.
I picked Spain specifically because it was an unlikely pick. And I thought that might actually help.
I feel like it kind of did. Well, because you couldn't have told me, like, America.
Right.
I know he wouldn't have been a count of America.
Right. And there's not that many places that actually do counts. Right? It's like France used to do them, but then changed it to Duke at one point. Then Germany has like Graph or whatever, which is like the German word for count, but it's not count.
Okay, but
Italy does them, but I didn't think Italy would be a good choice.
no.
Switzerland, I almost went with Switzerland, but I know you know a lot about Switzerland.
I don't know anything about Switzerland. I don't know where you get these ideas.
Do you not?
And I also don't know why you think I would have known that Germany or France was a bad one for count. But you got me good on that one. I feel a little fleeced.
This was inspired by a true fact.
Really? What is the actual true fact?
He was deemed an official ambassador of jazz by the U.S.
Oh. Well, that's like our version of a count.
Yeah.
That's like the president of pop has the ambassador of jazz instead of Ambassador Basie.
Yeah. The U.S. State Department appointed him an official jazz ambassador to represent American culture abroad.
So he really did grow the genre and the culture.
Yeah, that part was true.
I like it.
I was just going to bring that, but I was like, he's going to just know that's true because it's not weird enough to be fake.
Right.
So I was like, I'll turn it fake, but base it off of that.
I would like to take this and make it true, except it can't be true about Spain. We'll have to drop the A. I'm going to make, officially, I'm deeming him the Count of Spin.
He can be the Count of Spin. That's fun.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
Yeah, he's the Count of Jazz, according to Spin It. He's officially our Count.
Oh, I thought he was the Count of Spin.
Well, yeah, Spin It.
He's the Count of Jazz for Spin It, or is he the Count of Spin?
I just wanted to try and tie it into Spain in a clever linguistic way.
Oh, I kind of like making him the Count of Spin.
Well, but then I don't get the point.
Yeah, well, you're not getting it anyways, because the fact was that it was about Spain.
Fine. Fine, then he can be whatever count you want.
Not me. You named him. Don't name him. You'll get attached. We're only here for one episode.
I am pretty attached. Count Basie's cool.
All right, let's count our way up with fact number 2.
Ooh, I like it.
His kingdom is 472 million wide.
Okay, look, I know you're new at this, okay, but Connor established very early on, and I'm a firm believer that units are very important, okay?
I mean, you don't use them.
That's a good point. Touche. But his kingdom is 472 million wide.
Yeah.
So first of all, he's not a king, he's a count. But what's his kingdom?
Well, his land.
Right.
We just went over how counts rule an area.
Sometimes they do, but you said he was a general count.
Yeah, well, that was fake, wasn't it? So.
Okay, touche again. So his land, the property that Count Basie owns, is 472 million wide.
In a way.
In a way?
Not real land, but like
Fake land?
his kingdom. His kingdom.
What? How is he related to this land?
It's not really land. It's space.
Space.
He occupies a good chunk of an area.
You said space, and it's kind of making me think about Planet Springsteen again. Does Count Basie have a planet?
No, that'd be ridiculous.
Does he have a region, an area?
He has his own region of the internet.
His own region of the internet? Like a website?
472 million websites.
His kingdom of the internet is 472 million websites.
Yeah.
What is...
As of 2024.
Okay.
That's around 43.3% of all websites, by the way.
43% of all websites are in Count Basie's domain?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the very, very popular website hosting and internet dashboard service, WordPress.
WordPress. Okay. I see you've done that thing where you have not paid any attention to me talking to Connor in the first part of the episode. You really should start listening in.
Uh-oh.
Well, I did mention that in 2013, WordPress rolled out a software update that they called Count Basie.
Whoops. Completely. How did I miss that when I read through and checked them all?
I don't know. You got to be careful.
That one snuck past me here.
Well, it sounds like that's what you're talking about.
How did you find that? What?
It sounds like that's what you're mentioning. And
oh man,
I feel like I already know that his kingdom is 472 million wide. 472 million websites that are currently published. I shouldn't ask any more questions because that could lead us astray. I'm gonna lock in fact, and you could tell me it's true, and then we can ask all the questions.
This is.
I can hear you trying to think of a way to spin it. I can hear you trying to think of a way to not tell me this is just true.
It's true. I can't believe I must have typed it wrong. I did a Control F for WordPress and it didn't pop up.
Yeah, you tried. I guess you did your due diligence in looking, but you must have misspelled it or something.
That's sad.
So 43% of all websites are published through WordPress?
Well, actually, you know what? This is a spin.
Okay, no, stop.
This is a spin because that was back in 2013 under version 3.7. They're not on version 3.7 anymore.
That's what I was gonna ask, but
That means his kingdom is probably quite small.
his kingdom has crumbled.
If it even exists at all anymore.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So this is a spin. That's a point for the mixtaper. Thank you. How's it feel to be 0-2?
I wouldn't know.
It's unfortunate. 0-2. Time to count our way up to fact number 3.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that one doesn't count for you. Get it? Because it's a count joke. It's the same thing that you just did, but
Yeah, stop being derivative.
can't help it. A deriver's got to derive.
Hefti helped Basie accomplish one of his favorite career goals.
Neal Hefti helped Basie accomplish one of his favorite career goals. Well, what's the goal that Basie wants to accomplish?
To make it on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, that was one of the things that he wanted. Yeah, that's true. Did he do it? I mean, I guess that makes sense.
That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, and Neal Hefti helped him do it because he made it onto the Ed Sullivan Show with a song from this record?
It's explicitly why he hired Hefti to help him.
Interesting.
Their whole relationship began because he wanted Hefti's help to create a band and a sound that could make it onto the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. Well, I mean, I know Neal Hefti's pedigree after the Atomic Mr. Basie with all the Batman stuff, right? And Deep Purple. Mm-hmm. What's he been up to when Count Basie finds him?
Well, he'd actually been in and out of music.
Really? Thrown in the towel a few times?
Not a few times, but during World War II, he got hit by a car in New York and broke his pelvis.
Oh.
And took a few years off of music.
Yeah, that would do it. I feel like that's a little different than throwing in the towel.
I mean, he still could have worked on music. He just chose not to.
That's true. So, Basie gets onto the Ed Sullivan Show when?
He made it on for a record-setting Ed Sullivan Show.
Really?
On November 22nd of 1959.
Okay, not long after this album came out then.
Well, yeah, that's, again, the whole goal.
Right. True.
It was the most watched episode of the Ed Sullivan Show.
Ever? Or to that point?
No, ever.
Ever? Because, I mean, the Beatles are coming. They're not far behind Count Basie.
That's just what this says. They must have just barely not beat him out. They must be like number 2 or 3. This says Count Basie's got the most.
I don't know.
I mean, listen, I know you're biased towards the Beatles, but
It's not just, that's, if you think of the Ed Sullivan Show.
I'm looking at like an episode, like viewing sheet that has them in order by most views in November 22nd, 1959. With musical guest Count Basie and his orchestra.
Who else is on the episode?
I don't know. It doesn't say here. I'd have to. I could look. Hang on. Oh, huh. Why is he not listed in the credits for musical guests? What? Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It says that Tony Bennett was also on that episode.
Oh, interesting.
He's not listed under the musical guest section of this ranking sheet, but when I went looking for who else was in it, there's a YouTube video of the episode with Tony Bennett and Count Basie. Take the Stage.
Wild.
Ed Sullivan Show. Why would he not be listed under musical guests? Okay, whatever.
I don't know.
That's thrown me.
Surprise. Okay, so it's clear that this episode of the Ed Sullivan Show does exist. That's true. That's legit.
Count Basie played Back to the Apple.
That's not from the Atomic Mr. Basie. Did Neal Hefti work on that?
You asked me a question I don't have the answer to.
Apologies.
Yeah, sure did.
Okay. I think most of this is true. I'm a real skeptic that this is the most watched Ed Sullivan Show ever.
Call to spend then.
But it came out pretty recently after the first Grammys, where, I mean, both of them were pretty big winners, right? And they performed together. And
So imagine if the Chipmunks were also musical guests on that episode.
probably couldn't afford the appearance fees. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is a fact. Everything is, I feel like it's not the most popular, but it all checks out otherwise. That'd be a really easy thing to lie about, but
This is a spin.
I knew it. I knew it.
I just decided to start lying about everything you asked. I decided pretty early on into that fact that anything you asked, I was going to make sure it was a lie.
Oh, gosh.
I was just going to lie through my teeth. It was after I basically early on when I said it was his goal to want to be on there. And you went, oh, yeah, he did want to do that. I was like, oh, great. He already has some information. We're turning this one into a spin. It's going to lie about everything.
Wow. The most watched it's got to be the Beatles, right?
It's probably the Beatles. I don't know. I don't even have a ranking sheet. I just made that up to add to the spin that it was the most popular.
It was a really good lie because you spent a long time not knowing anything.
Well, that's because I had to double check some other factoids to add to the lie and not catch myself in a trap, such as when did Tony Bennett first become famous? Yeah, Tony Bennett wasn't on that episode.
Yeah. See, Elvis Presley's on there. The Beatles have an audience of 73 million. That has to be the most popular.
Yeah, it probably is.
I mean, everybody watched that. I've watched that.
I just decided I was gonna lie about everything. But yeah, so I was double checking that Tony Bennett was there, or was around then. I was double checking that the song was out by then. Hefti did not work on that song.
Okay, there you go.
He did perform it though. But Neal Hefti did. That is how they got together. When they first decided they were going to work together, it was in an attempt to create the sound that could appear on the Ed Sullivan Show. So that part was true.
I know. I knew that part. That's why I thought the whole thing.
And that's why I tanked it into a spin.
I just got stuck on it. I should have known the Beatles were the most. I'm not proud of that.
Yeah, gaslighting.
I knew better. I don't know how I let that happen.
Womp, womp, womp. Well, that makes me feel better about his kingdom. Ready to count our way up to our fourth and final fact?
Yeah, I guess. Final ramp time.
Boy, do we got a final ramp.
Actually, super annoyed with myself right now. I'm not mentally ready for another fact.
Oh, would you like to take a break?
No.
Oh, good, because you weren't going to get one.
Yeah, that's what I figured anyway, so.
All right, final rampage. Here we go. Batman can go space trucking past Count Basie.
Oh, this is one of those facts with an awful title. So, Space Truckin' is the song that was on the Deep Purple Machine Head album from last week's episode. Neal Hefti inspired it. So, Neal Hefti wrote the Batman theme song. And Count Basie. So, what's this mean?
Well, if you're space trucking as Batman, where are you?
In space?
Great. What else is in space that you might pass?
Everything.
I'll give you a hint. You said it earlier, and I said that'd be ridiculous.
Really? When I said a Count Basie planet?
Yeah.
Great.
That's why I was like, no, come on, that'd be ridiculous. Was because I knew it was coming later.
Because you knew you were going to tell me that Count Basie had a planet named after him.
Yeah.
That's two planet facts pretty close together. Bruce Springsteen just had his own planet.
Doing a lot of famous planet people. What can I say?
I guess so. His kingdom. How wide is his kingdom on this planet? What's the size of the planet?
Size? No idea.
Great. Where is it?
In space.
Okay, that narrows it down to nothing. Do you know how far away it is? When was it discovered?
It was discovered in 1997.
Okay.
By French astronomers.
Why is it named after Count Basie?
Why not? I really don't know if there was. They like Count Basie. I don't know. It's called Planet 35394 Count Basie. All one word, Count Basie.
Oh, what else do I need to know about this?
Need to know? That's up to you. That I can provide you, not much more.
Okay, that's fair. Did Basie ever visit this planet?
If I want to say yes.
But then I'm going to lock in spin
instant,
right away.
I know. He's like, I really wanted to say yes to that.
I tried to trap you. That was my trick. You saw through it. Okay, well, I'm going to say it's a spin either way.
Dang, saying it's a spin.
Yeah, I'm going to roll the dice on this one because Connor just found out that Neal Hefti did the Batman song and inspired Space Truckin'. Mm-hmm. So the title of this fact is immediately suspicious. But then...
Well, the title was definitely changed based off of your conversations with Connor in the first part, but...
I'm sure it was. But also, the fact that you specifically, dismissed when I said planet earlier, it just feels like you did that on purpose to lead into this.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, it was to lead into this, right?
And we just did a planet on Bruce Springsteen that was true.
Yeah, I mean...
And I feel like if you were going to lie about a planet...
Hey, lock in whatever you want. Go ahead. Go out on a limb.
I'm space trucking my way to spin. I think this is untrue.
Space trucking his way to spin. I have a question.
Yeah.
If I had said this was an asteroid instead of a planet, would you have said true or false? Fact or spin?
Probably still spin.
Then I would have got you, because this is a spin, because it was an asteroid, not a planet.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
I didn't think they named asteroids. Like, again, don't name it, you'll get attached in an asteroid.
Yeah.
I mean, it could just hit something and poof, there it goes.
In 1997, astronomers at a French observatory discovered an asteroid and named it Asteroid 35394 Count Basie.
Wow. That's actually really cool.
And that was the only information I had about it. I was like, well, you're just going to say fact. There's no reason not to believe it, as you sometimes say. Then you did the planet thing earlier, and I made the funny comment of that be ridiculous. I was like, I'm going to change it to planet in a couple facts.
See? That's what I felt like. It felt too intentional.
Yeah, should have stuck it with asteroid. I would have won. Instead, we 50-50'd. This was on a list of things named or made after Count Basie, including WordPress version 3.7.
Of course.
This asteroid, the Medal of Freedom, and a Count Basie 32-cent stamp issued by the USPS in 1996.
Fantastic. I'll take a 50-50 on a Count Basie episode. I'm glad that much like the atomic Mr. Basie, I'm glad I didn't blow up.
I mean, we can count them. 50.
That's true. We can each count our wins. 1, 2 for me, and 1, 2 for you.
Actually, I got 3 because the WordPress one was a spin, but...
No, that was actually not a spin. That was a true fact.
We'll leave it up to the audience.
And so we shall.
Well, until next time. Yeah.
And there he goes, the flight of the Foo mixtaper. Welcome back, Connor. Let's talk about the album cover of the Atomic Mr. Basie, or just Basie, or E equals MC squared.
Again, why is it E equals MC squared?
Well, because that's just what they put on the cover.
I don't understand why. E equals MC squared, which equals Count Basie Orchestra plus Neal Hefti arrangements. Seems like bad math.
It is bad math, and I think they just did it because it was really cool at that point in time.
Was it?
I mean, it was new back then. Remember, hot off the presses, Einstein's theory of relativity.
I remember when I first learned about his theory of relativity, I was like, whoa.
It was relatively awesome.
I mean, the press had quite a while to cool, but it was still pretty hot.
Yeah, they just put it there because it's atomic, quantum physics, and cool, scientific. The atom bomb explosion in the background is a memorable image, though. And I think it's in stark contrast to everything this album is.
Yeah.
I think this album is peppy, and it's happy, and it's like sometimes soft and sweet and gentle. And this album cover is chaotic and violent and explosive, and I feel like there's a real disconnect here. I think they just called it the Atomic Mr. Basie because it was the 50s and everyone was enthralled with the nuclear age. They wanted to play into that, I guess. The color's cool, though. It's a really nice orange, and I love the shade of blue they chose for Basie. Well, we got 11 tracks to talk about this time.
You ready to go track down the kid from the Red Bank?
Darn right, I sure am. This is an album that is wholly instrumental. Not one lyric on it. So the scores will have to be adjusted at the end of the episode, and we'll have to figure out what to talk about, if not lyrics. We'll have to distinguish from these songs musically.
The sweet, sweet instrumentals.
Absolutely. Yeah, The Kid from Red Bank is up first. It is such a powerful album opener. It's like a jolt of energy right off the bat. It's fast and it's loud. What'd you think? Not your first taste of Basie.
No, not my first tasty of Basie. Of Basie? I added an extra T in there.
Just changed his... I
added an extra T in there.
That didn't work.
The first tasty of Basie is what I meant to say.
Yeah, it didn't really work. But was it your first taste of The Kid from Red Bank?
Sure was.
Okay.
Well, see, this is why I saved all this, because it gives us something to talk about now.
That's true. I really like it. I mean, it's a short song. The shortest song on the album.
I like it too, except there's one thing that gets me.
What's that?
Sometimes these freeform jazz stuff, especially in the early eras of swing, hit sections of their songs that just sound like somebody randomly smacking keys on a piano.
Oh.
And it just it's like I could do that and make it sound somewhat the same.
No, I guarantee you could not, but I guess I can understand how it sounds like that.
No, like 90% of this sounds creative and swing and jazz, but it also sounds purposeful. But then there's like one little 10%, like 20-second blip in the song where it just sounds like he's going pling, 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 just all over the keys. And it's like, what are you doing?
I assure you he is not, and it's very well choreographed and thought out.
Doesn't sound like it. I guess that's where my annoyance comes, is because the other 90% sounds very thought out and purposeful, and that 10% just doesn't.
It totally does. It's just complicated jazz chords. A lot of sixths and flatted fifths and like just a lot of stuff that you're not used to hearing in normal music. Kind of improv, kind of played intentionally, but thrown over this chord progression and this rhythm that's going. I don't know. It sounds discordant, but it is intentional.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not intentional. I'm just saying it doesn't sound intentional.
I mean, that's kind of the point. They say jazz is all about the notes that you don't play.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'm an expert at jazz. I don't play a lot of notes.
I'm really good at jazz. Listen to all the notes I don't play. Yeah. One thing I actually really loved about The Kid from Red Bank, I mean, aside from Basie's really cool piano parts, I really love the upright bass. Honestly, I love the upright bass in so many of these songs. It's kind of funny that his name is Basie, because this album is very bassy. Especially it pairs well with his piano.
The upright bass in Duet, though, it shines on that one.
Duet's another good bass line. Duet features 2 muted trumpets.
Yeah, it does. Love a muted trumpet.
Yes, and they play in a duet, right? Very fun.
This is one I knew, by the way. Just get that out of the way.
As a trumpet player, honestly, not surprised. If you were to know one from this album, I'd probably pick Duet.
Yep. I played a version of this, actually.
Oh, really?
I didn't have the duet part, but...
Just a solo. You played Duet solo.
No.
Sounds pretty lonely.
Well, there's the parts in the song where, like, all the brass come in and give accent notes and all that.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
You played not one of the featured parts.
My college band, we did a jazz concert where, like, one quarter, we just studied a bunch of jazz music and practiced it and then did, like, a jazz concert.
Got it. Yeah, no, I really enjoy Duet. The two soloists on this recording, the two that are duetting, are Thad Jones and Joe Newman. They're those muted trumpets. I really like that they get the melody for a little while, and then there's this big hit before the end of phrases. That's the part that you got to play then?
Yeah. Yep.
I see. Well, then you got to play one of the more memorable musical moments.
Yeah, well, you get to do that, right, because you hit the note, and then you get to kind of do the warble, where you just kind of like go down the scale, hitting random keys down the scale to trail off, right? It's like, bam!
Oh, who's the one hitting random keys now?
Well, it's all about the ones I didn't hit.
That's true. You're right. I love Duet. It's one of my favorites from this album. It's one of the most memorable from this album, I think. And honestly, it's like the third longest track. It doesn't feel it at all, but it's 4 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yeah.
It's a very fun 12 minutes. And I think a lot of that has to do with the dynamics of quiet lead lines contrasted with big, explosive end-of-phrase moments. It's also got a very cool ending. I like the chord at the end of Duet. And I feel like Kid from Red Bank is pretty high energy. And then we shift into a lower gear for Duet. And then we, like, gently coast almost to a stop with After Supper. It is so slow and so quiet, and such a big difference from the first two tracks. There aren't many spots on this album where Basie and the band slow it down a lot, but there are just enough, I think, to keep it meaningful and engaging. I feel like it's easy if you go too slow to get bored, and I think he does a good job of balancing that with a lot of faster songs. But After Supper is a cool song.
Is dessert. Oh, sorry.
Oh, After Supper is dessert. Yeah, that's true. That's what the song is. Secret title is Dessert. I really like that we get to hear just piano and bass for a lot of After Supper. And I think to me, that shows that Basie knows how to hold back and not do too much. I mean, you said he sounded like he was just smashing keys all over the piano. Well, After Supper shows us that he knows when not to do that and when to hold back and when to accent things. I think he's got a really good sense musically of how to structure a song and play through it in a way that's really compelling. After Supper feels like a good example of that.
I didn't know After Supper.
No, that doesn't surprise me. I feel like most people don't. It's one of the less popular songs on this album.
It gets a little too slow.
I would agree. I think of the slower songs on this album, this one is probably the most burdensome.
And it's mainly, again, in that middle third where it's still slow and he pulls back on some of the instruments in an attempt to try to pull you in. Mm-hmm. And it starts to succeed. Like, you get pulled in, but then it's so slow before it gives you anything after you're pulled in that you kind of lean back. And it's like, oh, well, now you took too long after you had me to do anything.
Yeah, that's true. That is actually a really good way to describe the wave of emotions I go through on After Supper. It's fine, but it definitely would be a lower tier track on the album for me. You know what comes after Supper? You know what comes after Dessert?
A Foo Fight.
A Foo Flight. The Flight of the Foo Birds.
Another one I knew.
Oh, really? That's fun. How did you know this one?
I'm a fan of the flights.
Okay. What's that mean?
Flight of the Bumblebee.
Oh.
Flight of the Foo Birds. I'm a Flight fan.
I see.
It's one of the more popular ones.
It's definitely one of the more popular ones. Is this one that you, like, played?
No.
It's definitely one of the more popular ones, and rightfully so. I think it's a lot of fun.
We've been doing a lot of Foo lately. Is this who they were fighting? Were the Foo Fighters fighting Count Basie and his 472 million army?
His army of 472 million websites? No, I don't think they were.
I mean, he's talking about the fight of the Foo Birds. Oh, wait, the fight of the Foo Birds. Was Count Basie...
No, he's talking about the flight of the...
Maybe the Foo Birds were flying, and the Foo Fighters decided to engage them in combat, and Count Basie witnessed it and had to tell everybody. But I guess this would have come first, so actually, maybe Count Basie is a prophet for telling the fight yet to come.
No, I don't think so, but maybe. I mean, you remember the adjective Foo.
Sure.
From the Foo Fighters. Something that's fake. Because the pilots would fly in the war and they'd see a shape or something that they thought was a fighter, but it really wasn't. And
yeah, birds. Fake birds.
Said it was Foo, like Fooey.
Yeah, it was like fake birds flying through the air.
Foo Birds.
What do they call planes? Birds, right?
See, I mean, there might be a parallel for all I know.
So I'm telling you, he's a prophet. He's a prophet.
What I'm saying is, I mean, Foo Fighters is a term that's built on World War II terminology of Foo Fighters.
Where Count Basie's friend and comrade who worked on this got hit by a car and hurt his pelvis or whatever the mixtaper said. I think it's all coming together.
I think it's all falling apart. And it might not be based on Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters. It might be based on the World War II imagery of Foo Fighters, like fake airplanes and fake birds. I found a joke about Foo Birds that is apparently old, but I couldn't quite tell if it was old enough to have inspired this, or if it's something that somebody just thought up on their own, or what. I don't know, but it's a play on a popular phrase. I'll spare you telling the joke here, because it's very long. But Google Foo Birds, and it's one of the first results.
Okay.
So I don't think it's based on the joke, but it's definitely an older joke, and it's gone around, and it's possible. I really like Flight of the Foo Birds. More muted trumpets, which I really like.
Probably another reason I know it.
I think the song sounds straight out of like a 40s or 50s TV show. It's a great sound.
It is a pretty good sound.
One of the things I like about Foo Birds that we'll see later on in the album, I think it's got a really cool interplay between the brass and the woodwinds. You know, the brass kind of does its section, and then the woodwinds kind of respond with the same sort of instrumental melody. It feels a little bit like the cutting contests that he would participate in, like a battle between the two of them. Get a little woodwind, get a little brass. They kind of battle it out. I think it's a lot of fun. And Foo Birds is one of the songs where I really, really liked the drums. There's some cool drum fills in here. It goes pretty hard. I can see why this song is so popular.
Yeah.
Up next is a song called Double O. I had to look this one up too. I tried to look up all the titles and find out what on earth they're called. And Double O, in old slang, apparently means careful scrutiny or close inspection. Basically, it's like short for once over. Give something the double O means you check it thoroughly. Is that an expression you knew, Mr. I know all the expressions?
Again, you're putting me in these buckets.
You're the expression guy.
Am I? I feel like I'm constantly getting them wrong.
Well, that's true, but at least you're trying.
When I hear double O, I think of two things.
One is James Bond.
All right, I think of three things.
Okay. I thought you were going to say one was 007. I was so sure of it that I did put you in that box.
No, the first one is double stuffed Oreos.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And the second one is how we're 1 O away from the phrase we use a lot at work, OOO for out of office.
I genuinely thought you were about to say we're 1 O away from OOO, which is the phrase we use to spell ooh. That was going to be really funny, but you turned it into a serious thing, and okay, sure, out of office.
Well, I mean, it was always a serious thing. My bad.
Yeah, that's true. It's my fault for expecting more out of that. Double O is another song like Duet that has more phrases punctuated by big loud blats at the end, big loud accents of all the instruments coming in at once. I like Double O well enough. It stands as one of the least popular songs on this record.
Yeah, which surprised me.
Me too.
I think it's got some very fun instrumental runs and that big brass sound. But maybe just it's too similar to other songs of the same type.
That would make sense.
And so maybe that's why it's less popular.
It feels a little Glenn Miller-y to listen to it.
Yeah.
Not to mention it's short. I mean, it's 2:47, so you don't really have a good chance to like lock into it.
I don't know. I locked in. I liked that it was shorter.
Okay, maybe that works to its advantage. After giving it a good double O, I'm satisfied. I definitely think it holds up. But you're right, it's kind of, not to say nothing special, but kind of nothing special. On the other hand, Teddy the Toad is really something special. It's one of the best titles on this album. Teddy the Toad.
It's a pretty great title.
Do we think it's some person that's called the Toad whose name is Teddy?
Or is it a real toad named Teddy?
I kind of picture like a Jeremiah was a bullfrog kind of thing, where Teddy is the toad, and this is a song about the toad named Teddy.
Then in that case, I will choose to believe the other one, where it's just a guy whose nickname is the Toad.
Why do you think they call him the Toad?
Pees on people.
Oh, gives him warts. That's just the Toad. That's just Teddy the Toad. You know how he does. Bringing umbrellas, staying back.
If you weren't touching him and picking him up, maybe he wouldn't do it.
He just does it when he's scared. He gets scared of its defense. Teddy the Toad. Boy, oh boy. But as for the song, I really love, the trombones do some heavy lifting on Teddy the Toad, probably more so than anywhere else on the album. I think it's really fun. Also, it kind of reminds me of Duet, again, just in the way that it is. Kind of replace the muted trumpets with trombones, and the melody kind of follows some similar patterns. Teddy the Toad's nice. Also, fun fact, they only ever recorded it 3 times.
Oh, that's fun.
Up next is another of the album's most popular songs. Kind of surprisingly to me, Whirly-Bird has almost 4.5 million Spotify plays, putting it right up there amongst the big guns on this album.
I think it's third place.
Yeah, third place.
It's almost like I knew that before I said it.
Yeah, you did a good job counting. Whirly-Bird, it's a lot more brass. It's another big old saxophone feature, which I love. You gotta love a good saxophone feature.
Another one I knew.
Really? How'd you know Whirly-Bird?
I didn't just listen to it.
Oh.
I remember there was a period of time where I just went through like my Glenn Miller phase where I just listened to a bunch of instrumental brass and like big band music.
Uh-huh.
So I'm sure that's where it happened.
Probably. I think my problem with Whirly-Bird is, melodically, I don't think it has any good hooks. I think there's nowhere for me to latch on to Whirly-Bird. It's a little more chaotic and kind of all over the place. I guess like a Whirly-Bird, like a helicopter.
Oh, I like Whirly-Bird.
I just can't, it's not something you can like sing along to, like Teddy the Toad or Duet or Lil Darlin or any of them.
What?
I just don't feel like there's much of a melody happening that's like repeatable, that's hooky. The saxophone solo is really, really impressive, but it's like improvised jazz with strange intervals and stuff that I can't commit to memory.
I disagree, but that's okay.
I mean, fair enough. And again, it's still got a lot going on that's good for it. The upright bass, the drums are killing it. It's a fun song, and it's a good high-energy song after kind of the slower Teddy the Toad and before the really slow Midnite Blue. So, I mean, I'm glad it's here. It has a place. It's just not as memorable for me.
Fair enough.
Midnite Blue, though, I do really like. Despite it being the second least popular song on the album, I think Midnite Blue has some really great dynamics and crescendos. I mean, they hit some of those notes and then back off and ease into them. There's a really nice flow to it that captures the feel of Midnight, and I like it a lot. Like After Supper, it's another and maybe even a better chance for Basie to cut loose on the keys and kind of just do his thing in between all these bigger brass parts. He kind of builds that space in for himself.
Sure.
Midnite Blue also does sound like a song that I could hear maybe conceivably playing in the background of an episode of Batman with Adam West. Sounds like, I mean, fitting for Neal Hefti, you know?
Midnite Blue was okay. Do we know why it's spelled that way?
Well, it's shorter than spelling it Midnight Blue with a GHT.
By one character, but sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's cooler that way, maybe. It's more hip and trendy. Maybe it's a specific color blue that they're trying to evoke.
Maybe.
Maybe Midnight Blue, NITE, is different than Midnight, NIGHT Blue. Or, I mean, I know this has happened to other songs, and again, you're right, it's a 2-character difference, so I don't think that's the case. But if he's trying to write jukebox hits, sometimes you have to have a shorter title to fit it on a jukebox card, so people will know what song it is. And maybe the GHT was the last straw. Had to go.
Maybe.
Is the spelling really what put you off this song? Like, you can't get into it because the title is spelled wrong?
No, I just don't think I was in the right mood for this one. I was in a big band mood, not a noir, rainy day.
Ooh, noir, that's a good adjective for this. It's definitely a lot smaller.
I guess I was more in a Splanky mood.
Oh, yeah. Splanky is the most popular song on this album by like a factor of 4 or 3. It's a lot. It's the most popular in a landslide. It's also just one of my personal favorites, both in title and in melody. You want to talk about a good melody you can sing along to? Splanky is it. Do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do. You can't resist it. It's so good. The bass is killing it on Splanky. There's another call and response from brass and woodwinds. It's kind of got all the hallmarks of a song that I would like.
Yeah.
I also think it's the perfect length. That 3.5 minutes is like enough to leave me wanting more, but not getting too tired of it.
And it just, that big band sound, it builds to. It starts out smaller, but by the 2-minute mark, you just hit this wall of sound that is so satisfying.
It's true. They do kind of ramp it up every time they go through that melody. Splanky really scratches the edge. Now, I did look, and I did Google, and I did try. Could not find what the heck Splanky means, or is about. It could be a name. It could just be the sound of the instruments. I think one of the reasons most people speculate that it's called Splanky is because the trumpets and the way that it is sounds splanky.
Splanky means like cool, fresh, chill, fun, funky, extra fly.
Does it?
Groovy, hard, hip. Copacetic.
Copacetic. Yeah, I can't call this song copacetic.
Righteous is on here.
It seemed like people couldn't find a real reason why it was called Splanky.
Some people think it might come from his signature piano style. The way he hits the keys, giving the notes a splank ring to them.
Yeah.
Don't know what that means.
That's the way it sounds.
But no, a lot of people just seem to think that it's a slang word for cool or hip.
I feel like Basie kind of started it. I don't think people were saying Splanky, and I mean they still aren't. I think Basie tried to make it into something here.
Maybe he did. He could have.
This is definitely going to be our splankiest episode.
We've been a little splanky this whole time and didn't even know it.
Yeah, I know.
We needed the count to show us the way.
To get our splank on.
You might have your splank on, but I've put on my Fantail.
Oh, good. Do you know, Splanky might not have a proper definition, but Fantail sure does.
Hit me with it.
Fantails are nifty little insectivorous songbirds that are native to Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they fan their little tails out when they're flying, and it helps them maneuver, and then they smack bugs with their tails and eat them. That's how they catch bugs.
Like a fly swatter. Wha-pop!
Like a fly swatter with their tail. How cool.
Nature's fly swatter is what they're sometimes known as.
Really? Is that true, or are you saying that because it's funny?
No, I just made that up.
Well, it sounds true, and I will now call them nature's fly swatter. There are a lot of bird-coded songs on this record. The Flight of the Foo Birds is birdie. Whirly-Bird is birdie.
Maybe Splanky's a type of bird.
Splanky could be a bird. Fantail is a bird. Teddy's a toad. This seems very birdie.
Birds eat toads.
I think Fantail is interesting. It's less popular, actually the least popular on the album, but it's a lot jumpier in its intervals, and it's another one like Whirly-Bird that's very chaotic, very organized chaos, but definitely feels like a bird darting to and fro. Side note, fro might be the laziest abbreviation we've ever come up with.
Probably.
To and from? No. That M doesn't need to be here. To and fro. Either way, I feel like I learned a lot about fantails looking up this song, and that's really fun. Neat little bird. And bringing up the rear, Lil Darlin, the second most popular song from the record, and another track that has become a bona fide jazz standard.
Yep.
Now, you thought that After Supper was slow. Lil Darlin is also right there with it.
But this one, holds you.
Yes, it does. So Hefti originally wrote Lil Darlin as a medium tempo swing, right? It wasn't supposed to be so slow. But Count Basie slows it down right to the edge of stalling out. He pulls you in like he does on After Supper, but he hooks you, and he doesn't lose you like he does on After Supper. Jazz writer Donald Clark actually described Little Darlin as an object lesson in how to swing at a slow tempo. And I think it is honestly perfect. I think any faster, and it loses some of its emotional weight. Any slower, and it loses you. It would stall out. I think Basie's walked a really fine line, threaded a really small needle on Lil Darlin, and done it very well, with a song that's memorable for all the right reasons. It ended up being one of my favorites from this record, even though most of the slow songs I would generally consider to be the weaker spots on this album.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lil Darlin.
Me too. And this version doesn't have any, but the song did get some lyrics later on in 1958, and it would be covered by big names like Ella Fitzgerald, who we talked about on an episode in the 120s. So that's cool. I should go look up her version of it, because I'm really interested to hear it. I think it's just a pretty song, and such a nice way to close out this album. It leaves you really feeling good on a high note. And then you close the album and look at this album cover of a nuclear explosion, and it feels...
And you're like, why was that there?
It just feels so... like there's such a cognitive dissonance there that is wild. And it's also jarring. I mean, nowadays this is a problem. Wasn't in 1958 when you had this on a vinyl record. When I finished this album and it jumped back into the kid from Red Bank, I about had a heart attack. I am so chill and in the zone with Lil Darlin, and then it's just bump, like panic. But I think that just goes to emphasize the wide range of tempos and styles and things that Basie does on this album in an attempt to make a record that's jazz and swing with mass appeal and pop value. I think he's succeeded. So let's get into Final Spin. Musically, I'm giving this album an 84. I like a lot of these songs, and a lot of them actually do have really good melodic hooks, like Duet and Flight of the Foo Birds, Teddy the Toad, Splanky, Lil Darlin. A lot of really good melodies, even though it's just an instrumental album. And even the parts that there aren't necessarily big melodies to latch onto, like Double O and Whirly-Bird, there's still a lot happening musically that's really complex and really cool. So 84 for that. Can't give it a lyric score. So, just in case it's not clear, we don't do a lot of fully instrumental albums, but my scores are all weighted. And when an album does not meet a certain category, for instance, like this, where there's no lyrics, I take the weight of that category and I distribute it to the other ones evenly. So, there you have it. The music is, I guess, in that regard, comparably weighted a little less, whereas instruments, production, and the vibe are weighted a little heavier. when there's no lyrics like this. I'm giving instruments an 82. I think this album maybe has a tendency to run together a little bit. If you're not sitting there watching the tracks switch over from one to the next, it's a very seamless album, which I think is good. I just think it's really easy to get lost in it, and some of the tracks feel a little bit indistinct moment to moment. Not all bad, but I'm giving it an 82 for instruments and production. Overall vibe, 86. Really interesting album, really great starting point for Basie. Neal Hefti is an interesting figure, and I'm glad to have his story under our belts now too, under our Batman utility belts. So, no writing credits actually for Count Basie on this album. I mean, he did a great job of playing it and a lot of improv and stuff, but yeah, as Neal Hefti wrote all these tracks, he does not get a bonus point. So that puts the overall score for this instrumental big band Count Basie Atomic Mr. Basie record. Its overall score is an 84.2, ranking it at number 375, above Jagged Little Pill and Alanis Morissette, and below Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet. Oh, those kind of rhymed. That's fun. Anyway, that's me. I'm curious to know what you thought about this, because you've played some of the songs, you knew some of the songs, and you didn't know some of the songs.
Oh, yeah.
You've got like 3 different levels of familiarity with the Atomic Mr. Basie.
I enjoyed it. I'm not in my big band phase right now.
Not in your Basie era?
Not really what I'm in the mood for. I'm not, no, please. Era, that's too Taylor Swift.
Right.
We do phases here, like the moon.
I mean, we did the moon era. That was kind of the whole...
How could you do this to me?
I'm just trying to be accurate.
As you said to the mixtape earlier, touche.
A lot of touches this episode. Very splanky and very touche.
I liked it, but you gotta be in the right mood for it. I mean, it feels old.
That's from 1958.
Yeah, so it is old.
You'd feel old too if you were around in 1958.
I struggle to figure out where to put this one.
It is a tricky one.
It's one of those things, technically I could see it getting a 9, but that's not where I'm gonna put it.
I mean, that's entirely your call. If you want to give it a 10, I'm not going to stop you, but that's a surprise. It's one of those ones like Duke Ellington that's like interesting as a piece of history and really cool to know.
Right.
And has a lot of merit as a work of jazz standards.
Yeah.
But it's hard to compare.
Yep. But with all that said, it's gonna end up getting a 7 out of 10.
Oh, 7's kind of a far fall. Okay.
I'm putting it right above Hank Williams.
Above Hank.
Right below Bob Dylan. Near some other history greats.
Yeah, I guess you just have a 7 thing for history.
History's a solid 7.
I would say higher than that maybe, but it's fine. Cool. That's where you put it. That's where you put it. Year of discovery. We've discovered Count Basie.
Yep. As for my unit, I mean, this one's getting 7 units you didn't hear. Because those are the only ones that matter.
7 units you didn't
hear.
Hey, that's what jazz is all about. Jazz is all about the units you don't hear.
Exactly. Maybe don't is better than didn't. Units you don't hear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's go with that. Units you don't hear.
Okay, I can roll with that. I thought you were going to make your unit 7 websites. Since, websites was the unit on Count Basie's 47 million kingdom. But the mixtaper did that. You had nothing to do with it.
Exactly. My top 3 in album order. Duet.
Wow. Okay.
Flight of the Foo Bird.
Yep.
Honorable mention going to Whirly-Bird.
Oh, poor Teddy.
I know. And Lil Darlin.
Oh, poor Splanky.
I know. I really like Lil Darlin.
That's fair.
I only have 4, and I really like Duet and Lil Darlin, which were lesser known.
Well, and Duet's a popular one that you like and you know. Lil Darlin is probably the best slow song representation you're going to get as the ballad guy.
Yep.
I'm mostly okay with that top 3. I would change Whirly-Bird around myself, either to Splanky or to Teddy the Toad, but for the most part, I think I might actually be in agreement. And I also might just be biased towards Teddy the Toad because of the name.
Yeah.
But hey.
Well, we put on the playlist.
You got to pick one.
I feel like I've been picking first a lot lately. I think you should go this time.
Well, just last time we decided by committee. You asserted that Smoke on the Water needed to be on there.
Yeah.
And said, we'll pick the other one.
Yeah, so I went first.
Well, touche. I would really be inclined to go for Duet or Splanky.
I'd be okay with both of those.
Okay. Easy enough. Unless you want me to just pick one and you could pick your own.
Yeah, you can pick one.
I think you're more likely to take Duet if I don't pick it.
I think I'm going to pick one of the fast-paced ones if you're picking Splanky or Duet.
I think between the two of them, I'll take Splanky. It's just so fun. Do-do-do, da-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Blanky splank.
All right.
Blanky splank.
I think I'll take Flight of the Foo Bird.
Okay, that's a good combo.
And Splanky Foo going on the playlist.
I suppose so. Marvelous.
Can't believe we're here.
We are sure here at the end of another episode and the end of another album.
Where can they find more episodes? And I guess more albums.
If you want more albums, I mean, listen to wherever you get your music. But if you want more episodes, listen to wherever you get your podcasts. We are on all the platforms. You can also find us at Spin It Pod Official on Instagram, at Spin It Pod on X, and www.spinitpod.com on the web for all the goods. We'll be coming at you next week with another episode, of course. Be sure to follow and rate and like and subscribe and do all the fun things. It is incredibly helpful, and we appreciate it a lot. Tune in next week to hear Connor say silly things like this.
Oh, the horse doesn't like that they don't allow guns.
That's some Teddy the Toad level stuff right there. I bet not even Teddy the Toad would say something like that.
It's more about the things he didn't say.
That's right. The episode is about the things Connor doesn't say.
I was going to make that joke about the playlist picks, too, after we picked them and say, hey, but the songs we didn't pick are the more important ones.
The playlist is all about the songs we don't pick.
It's just a funny thing to say about everything.
It really is, I know. Tell your Lil Darlin about the podcast.
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe they'd like it. I don't know. Maybe you'd make a good impression on them.
I was going to say go find a toad and tell them about...
Oh. Go tell Teddy the Toad. Yeah, you can tell him too.
Go find somebody that you would nickname the Toad and tell them about the podcast.
Dang. We'll see you next week, and until then,
keep spinning.
Honestly, not even that hard to count Basie.
I mean, there's only one.
There's one Basie.
Bet you there's more than one Basie.
No way. There's only one guy named Basie, but then apparently also an asteroid and a WordPress update.
Yeah, so that's 2.
And a theater and a street.
3.
And a Dance Gavin Dance song named Count Basie.
4, 5. When you type in famous Basies, you just get 50 greatest bassists of all time.
What if that's what we called bassists? Basies.
This is my band. I got my guitarists, my singers, my drummers, and my bassies.
Hey, I don't think most of them would mind it.
What if we just named everybody that way? You got my bassies, my drummies, my singies.
Honestly, might be an improvement. Does that make you my co-hosty?
The co-hosty with the mosty. Are we copacetic? Are we Splanky?
Yeah, I think we're Splanky on this one. Let's call it a day.